Again, this is another sign of the times, an analysis, and a commentary. The Parkland school shooting. President Donald Trump has enthusiastically embraced a National Rifle Association position to arm supposedly highly trained teachers to fortify schools against mass shootings. Mr. Trump, who said the armed teachers should receive extra pay as an incentive, promoted his idea as demands for stronger gun control intensified across the country. You give them a little bit of a bonus, so practically for free you have now made the school into a hardened target, Mr. Trump said. The president estimated that 10% to 40% of school employees would be qualified to handle a weapon. He offered no data for the claim and said he would devote federal money to training them. President Trump has cycled through a number of proposals, including some gun limits deemed unacceptable by the NRA in the days since the rampage killed 14 students and 3 adults at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. He has returned to an idea championed by the gun rights group. I don't want teachers to have guns. I want certain highly adept people that understand weaponry, guns, if they really have that aptitude, Mr. Trump said. In other words, more weapons of mass destruction. He promoted the idea even as a sheriff's deputy, who had been the only armed guard at the high school, resigned after surveillance video showed that he never tried to enter the school to confront the shooter. As a candidate in 2016, Donald Trump campaigned with the support of the NRA and has been an ardent advocate of gun rights. The president spoke just after the NRA chief delivered a fiery address to conservatives gathered for a conference on the outskirts of Washington, in which he said the proper response to the carnage in Parkland was not to pass new gun laws, but to better enforce the existing background check system and harden our schools with more armed guards. Mr. Trump echoed that language during his meeting at the White House, using the term harden more than a dozen times in less than an hour, as he said a fortified school would be an unappealing target for a gun-wielding assailant. We have to let the bad guy know that they are hardened, Mr. Trump said. His talk harked back to a formulation that the NRA chief popularized after 20 children and 6 adults were gunned down at a shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012. The president also said he believed the powerful gun lobby would support a move to raise the age threshold for buying firearms to 21 from 18, a change the NRA is resisting, along with enhanced background checks. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, and the minority leader, said Mr. Trump's emphasis on arming teachers revealed that he was in the thrall of the gun lobby. Not surprised, the NRA reeled President Trump back in, he said, just amazed at how fast it happened. Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago, who has been an outspoken advocate for gun control and is among Mr. Trump's most vocal critics, blistered the president. No police officer, no educator of any note is advocating that what we need is more weapons on school campuses rather than fewer, said the mayor, adding, it's totally asinine and it doesn't even warrant a response, but it's so reckless that the head of the United States' idea for solving this problem is to arm more people. In other words, more weapons of mass destruction. Arming teachers is not a new concept. The NRA campaigned for it after Sandy Hook, but Mr. Trump's resurrection of the proposal has come under swift opposition from teachers, organizations, and law enforcement officials who argue it would put unreasonable burdens on educators while making schools less safe. The president of the American Federation of Teachers said she had held a telephonic town hall in which she discussed the proposal with 60,000 educators. The response was universal, even from educators who are gun owners. Teachers don't want to be armed. We want to teach. She said, we don't want to be and would never have the expertise needed to be sharpshooters. No amount of training can prepare an armed teacher to go up against an AR-15. Perhaps the real problem is with society and the culture of violence. It's in the movies, it's in the TV shows, it's in the video games. And it can desensitize people to violence. Also, there's a spiritual side to these things. And then there's this inescapable reality. Teachers are human. It means they would most likely react to stress-induced fear, the same as anyone else, with unintended consequences that could put even more people in peril. So then, no other advanced nation experiences frequent massacres the way we do, because they impose background checks for prospective gun owners, limit the prevalence of guns in general, and ban assault weapons that allow a killer to shoot dozens of people before he, yes, it always seems to be a he, can be taken down. And these regulations work. Take the case of Australia, which used to experience occasional American-style gun massacres. After a particularly horrific example in 1996, the government banned assault weapons and bought such weapons back from those who already had them. There have been no massacres since. Meanwhile, anyone who imagines that amateurs packing heat can be counted on to save everyone from a crazed killer with a semi-automatic weapon, as opposed to shooting one another or third parties in the confusion, has seen too many bad action movies. Some say, in short, you might want to think of our madness over guns as just one aspect of the drive to turn us into what Thomas Hobbes described long ago, a society wherein men live without other security than what their own strength and their own invention shall furnish them. And he famously told us what life in such a society is like: solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Yes, that sounds like Trump's America, in some kind of way. This too is another sign of the end of times as we know them, transition days, which is a time of extraordinary happenings, events, and changes. Because it really is about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations? And that should be a very important question to ask. Matthew 24:15. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader or the listener understand, but let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his coat. And alas for women who are pregnant, for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Christ," or "There he is," do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So, if they say to you, Look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, Look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes and nations of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Yes, it's time for prophecy to be fulfilled, and all these are more signs. And this is what I see, think, feel, and spiritually discern. Again, therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour.